When we planned on putting this together, we had a formal presentation to our board last week at our board meeting, and that went really well. That was a formalized presentation, and we know our audience. We know we have a 7-member board that's going to listen to us and want to understand all the things we do. But when you put together a public town hall and you put it out on social media and you expect people to show up and be interested because we're so interested, you just never know how many people are going to be here. But look at this place. It's basically packed. And to see all the people around the poster session asking questions and interacting with the team, it's great. My role here is just to introduce the whole topic tonight. First off, I'm going to start with some housekeeping things. Bathrooms are over by the entry door, back in the corner over there. Emergencies, if there's any type of emergency tonight, the emergency exit is the door you came in, or there's exit on my left and my right. I would ask that if there is an emergency, that you follow the lead of the Marysville Police Department. There are plenty of them here. Raise your hand, Marysville Police Department. And thank you for being here. Also, I would like to ask you to silence your cell phones. Now I want to introduce our elected leaders or their representatives. And I do need to read this list because I won't remember them all and I don't want to miss anyone. So first off, we have David Morgan from Lamalfa's office. David, where are you at? There you are, brother. And we have Isabella Morgan from Assemblyman Gallagher's office. There she is. And from the Yuba Water Agency Board, we have John Messick. Where are you hiding, John? There you are. We've got Rennick House. There's Rennick back over there. And then Gary, I haven't seen you yet, but I think you're here. Gary Bradford. And from Marysville City Council, Dom Belza. Where are you at, Dom? There you at, brother. Thanks for being here. We absolutely appreciate you for that. And so why are we here? Well, one of the primary missions, oh, sorry. Rob just told me I missed one. Margie Rollins. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry to miss you, Margie. Did I miss any other elected officials or their representatives? Okay, very good. So why are we here tonight? One of the primary missions of the creation of Yuba Water Agency is to reduce flood risk in Yuba County. We have Yuba our reservoir, and we partner with all kinds of people who you'll hear from tonight to reduce the risk of flooding in Yuba County. And like I said, last week we had a presentation to our board on all the things that we do. And when I say the things that we do, I'm not just talking about Yuba Water Agency. I'm talking about the collective we. The panelists tonight, many of you in the audience. And what tonight is for you all to understand, one, what is the risk of flooding in Yuba County? Two, what have we all done, the collective we, to reduce that risk? And what you need to understand about your risk and what you can do to prepare for that. So with that, I'd like to introduce Yuba County Superintendent of Schools, Rob Gregor, our moderator.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. We're going to get started here. I'm going to start off with first introducing the panel and going through their bios real quick and discussing them. And then I have some questions for our panel. And they're going to give you their honest answers from what they can do from their mind. So in the middle, I'm going to start with Sheriff Wendell Anderson. He's a lifelong Yuba County resident whose top priority has always been public safety. He began his career with Yuba County Sheriff's Office in 1996 as a reserve deputy sheriff, and he has steadily worked his way through the ranks. And in 2018, the wonderful citizens of Yuba County elected him as our 28th sheriff. He's currently serving his second term in office, and we're hoping he continues to do that and moves for that. So, and then next to Sheriff Wendell Anderson is Patrick Marr, and he has served as our General Manager of Reclamation District 784 since 2020, as looks like that. And the following 8 years, he's also worked as the District now Field Superintendent. With a background in construction management and extensive training in emergency response and regulatory compliance, he brings strong leadership, management skills to the role, and overseeing district operations throughout South Yuba County. On the very end, Oscar Marin, he is with we call it EOS, but it's Emergency Operation Managers, EOM, of Yuba County Office of Emergency Services. And he holds a Bachelor's of Science in Emergency Management, and he has over 15 years of experience. He was someone who was born and raised and is still a current of Yuba County. Oscar brings to the job his personal experiences and being a part of actually the 86 and the 97 floods. John James, right here on my left, is a Yuba Water Agency Director of Resource Planning. John James oversees the Resource Planning Division efforts related to licensing, environmental and watershed enhancement, and reservoir flood and water operation. His work supports the agency's hydroelectric and power systems operations. That's a lot of words to say. Prior to joining the Yuba Water Agency in 2019, James spent 14 years, I should say John, spent 14 years at Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E. His career has also worked as an operational meteorologist, providing global weather forecasting and the routing for commercial cargo ships. You hold a bachelor's degree in atmospheric sciences from the University of California, Davis. And I got one more. Ryan McNally. Ryan's the only one here that we've decided has gone through the 55 flood with us. And so he's the oldest of all of us. And he's... Sorry, but his family's been here longer than that. He's the Director of Water Resources and Flood Risk at Yuba Water. His team is responsible for investing Yuba Water's resources to reduce the risk of flooding and for to help protect the people of Yuba County. Additionally, he's responsible for the surface water and the deliveries from New Bullard's Bar to our local farmers and managing the health and the groundwater basin. Ryan is, as I said, a lifelong resident of Yuba County and fully understands the flood risk we face in our community. He's been evacuated himself from Marysville in '86 and '97, and then again in 2017 from his new home in Plumas Lake when the rivers began to rise, and the Yuba Water's first point of contact with our emergency service providers and our local levee maintaining agencies to see how the agency can assist with coordinating a response to keep the people safe. So with that being said, that's a big bout of words. We'll give our panel a big hand for everything to get started. Just to kind of give you a heads up, there's going to be some questioning and stuff at the end where you get to ask some questions, and we'll do a little Q&A. But we're going to first start with the panel and asking them some questions. So we're going to start with Ryan first. So the first question is going to come to you. Let's begin by setting the stage. There's a little bit of understanding of why we even have flood risk in the first place. And if you could, please explain to us the risks we still have and why they're related to the gold rush from the mid-1800s.
That's a really good question. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, there's a lot of reasons behind flood risk here in Yuba County, but a lot of it is based on the history of the gold rush. And a little trivia here, the town of Linda was actually named after a steamboat that used to use the deep river channel that was on the Yuba River. That tells you, how the landscape was way back, kind of not prehistoric, but predating the city of Marysville or early in Marysville's history. And what happened during the gold rush? A lot of hydraulic mining occurred. You can see the remnants of this as you head up into the foothills, through the gold fields, a lot of the aggregate. There's massive piles of rock everywhere. What happened was when they washed down the mountains to get the gold, a lot of that came down into the floodplain here on the Yuba River, and it actually rose the elevation of the Yuba River, in some places higher than the elevation of Marysville. And so obviously that brought up the water level as the water came down the river. Flooding started to become a problem. And then we built levees, and we built more levees, and we built more levees. Try to combat that. And it's ongoing today. It's something we have to contend with, and a lot of our infrastructure projects are we take that into account. But our history is here today.
So with that mining, you're telling me that like sediment is basically coming into the rivers, and that's kind of the change in the pattern. What about with fires or things like that? Does it have anything to do with those? And any sediment, does that change the river patterns, or any of that too with it? Why would do that?
I wouldn't think fires, no, not so much fires, but a lot of it is the aggregate, it's the sediment that came out of the Sierra and foothills associated with gold mining.
Awesome. All right, next question. This one's yours, Shane. So we're coming to you, number 2. Earlier this year in Texas, there was some extreme flooding, as you are aware. You must have saw that on the national news. More than 135 people died when the community suddenly got anywhere from 10 to 16 inches of rain within 24 hours. This is understandably caused a lot of fear in our own backyard. People are wondering if this could happen here in light of our flood risk. So you're a meteorologist. I understand. Can you explain if we should be concerned, and if so, what would be happening here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Can you hear me? The floods in Texas and the floods that we experience here are really kind of fundamentally different things. So what really happened there was a flash flood. It was essentially a torrential amount of rain that occurred in one spot due to a series of tropical thunderstorms that basically continued to rain over one specific area. And because of that, they saw rivers rise something on the order of like 30 feet in 1 hour. I mean, just kind of unimaginable amounts. And with that, there wasn't a lot of time to basically do any kind of communication or emergency things like In contrast here, our flooding is caused by atmospheric rivers, and these are kind of bigger events, meaning that we can see them out ahead of time. And with that, we're able to forecast that. We also have a flood control system, including our Newport's Bar Dam, so that we can reduce flows downstream and use the flood control space in those reservoirs to attenuate the flows. And really what that is, it's kind of more of a slow rise flood. So when we talk about the Texas floods, and if I'm concerned if that could happen here, I'm really not.
Awesome. If you're not aware, please sign up for the Yuba alerts. Those are some of the things that you can get that information and be able to be ahead of the game, so if we are doing something, you know what's happening, and we want you to have that opportunity. So if you didn't do that, please make sure you do that before you leave today. Patrick, you're next online. All right, so we've built up our levees to help reduce flood risk. Originally, we used materials dredged right from the river. They've become much more modern and now sturdy in recent years. But I think a lot of people don't really understand how the levee systems actually work. Can you tell us or explain to us how our own levees around here and what the reclamation districts do to help prevent flooding?
It's an excellent question, Rob. As you alluded to, the levee systems have improved immensely over the years since 1986 and 1997. To start off with, the feather setback levee was constructed along with the bear setback levee in the mid-2000s. And along with those projects, several stability berms, seepage berms, and several other infrastructure, slurry wall, cutoff walls have been constructed in the levees to completely rehabilitate the once weak levee system, which is now more stronger and robust than ever. And with modern technology, in addition to the cutoff walls, they have what are called relief well structures that will channel seepage that does make it under the way of the levee into a controlled dispersal fashion to ensure that the structural integrity of the levee maintains itself throughout a high water event. And so in addition to that, we have reliable staff that goes through regular training to ensure that we're prepared for flood fighting events and levee patrolling.
So the word reclamation comes up, and you say you're a district. A lot of people may not even know this. Can you explain even what a reclamation district is or what that is about?
Absolutely. So a reclamation district, the definition of reclamation is to reclaim the land that would otherwise flood. And so reclamation districts were formed during the late 1800s, early 1900s in California, and that enabled communities to take the land back for farming, and it also includes for internal drainage purposes, and also to enable the areas to urbanize and build structures. And so that's the purpose of a reclamation district. And there are several in California, including 7 in this regional area, including levee districts.
Amazing. Ryan, this one kind of goes in your ballpark too. So with that, we have a lot of reclaiming land from flooding to make suitable for farming, different things like that. But we mentioned that there's levees that are being significantly improved, is what we just heard from Patrick. Can you tell us a little bit more what we've done over the last couple of decades? And then maybe you can just kind of talk about the status of even our levees today and where are we and how prepared we are.
Yeah, for sure. So over the last several decades, as Patrick alluded to, there's been a lot of improvements, and one of those is actually the location of the levees. And if you look at the Feather River setback levee that protects Plumas Lake, that was actually moved. The physical footprint of the levee was moved to widen the floodplain, the river channel. That obviously lowers the level of the river as it's coming down, and it decreases the risk on the levees. The other thing is just technologies that go into levees, the construction methods, and the use of like bentonite, and there's different layers. Kind of think of it like a birthday cake. If you turn a levee on its side, there's different layers of a birthday cake, and that's how they're constructed. It's not just a pile of dirt. There's a great amount of engineering science that goes into these things. And so I think that plays an important role as well. In terms of, sorry, what was the second part?
Oh, the second part was just the part about the actual levees and the structure and how secure are we and where we're going with them today.
Yeah, and so our urban areas in Yuba County, I'm talking the city of Marysville, I'm talking Linda, Plumas Lake, all of us, we're protected by 200-year level levees right now. And so did everybody here get to spin the wheel over there in the corner? So what that is, when I say a 1 in 100-year level event, for those of you born in that exhibit, all that represents is the percentage of a magnitude event that would occur in any given year. It does not mean that it will only occur once every 100 years. And I can prove that tonight because I don't think there's 100 people in here. 2 people rolled a 100-year event. So, show of hands of who rolled.
All right.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, Mark.
That was another one too.
Right in the back.
Okay, so that's 2 100-year events. We also rolled, I think, 2 25-year events and 2 50-year events. So that just goes to show, what we talked about. Now back to what the status of the are today. Again, our urban areas are.
People want to know if it's safe. Am I okay?
Yeah, and an example I gave, again, as a video demonstrated, I went back there 3 times. I live in Plumas Lake now. That's how comfortable I am with levees on.
That's good to hear. That's where I live too. So I think about how many Plumas Lakers do we have out here? Okay.
And Rob, real quick to add, the purpose of a reclamation district, operating and maintaining the levees is half of what a reclamation district does. And already said in pore space, we operate and maintain 60 miles of internal drainage canals and 10 pumping stations to ensure that the stormwater is pumped back into the rivers, keeping the community safe from flooding.
It's just interesting. I know a lot of those that have been here long enough, when you hear the term Plumas Lake, you're looking for the lake. And for some of us that have been here longer, you know why it's called Plumas Lake. But to hear that the levees are that strong and that even you would live there yourself and put your family there, says a lot about it, right? So again, that gives a lot of even peace for myself who lives there with my family. Oscar, you're next on the list. So what you do usually is you recommend for people and to be prepared for a possible flood. So give us a little things that we should be ready for or we should do, or we get the notification that there is something coming. How do we get that notification and all those kind of things?
Well, the good thing that everyone should do is follow our Yuba alerts. Sign up to go to regular notification. To go to our page and the QR code for those that visit our station there, that takes you to a page that has all of our emergency notification. You get river levels there, you get sandbags locations there, you get zone haven information, which you know your zone. It gives you all in one stop shop to get all your information needed for emergency notification or emergency information within the county. Next would be have a go back. Prepare a go back with yourself. If you have to leave at a moment's notice, important documentation that will be needed to recover from an actual evacuation or emergency that you be faced with.
What are a few things like in a go back just for the average person that doesn't do that? What would something would be in there besides water and a blanket? Some normal little things like that.
Go back, you have documentations, passports, licenses, very important documentation. A lot of people put them on zip drive. You can have a flashlight in there. You can have a water bottle in there to fill up water. Just anything that's pertinent and emergent for yourself to take with you in case you have to leave a moment's notice.
So like insurance information, things like that would be perfect?
Prescription cards,
Okay.
Prescription medication, pill containers, and that stuff.
Right. So you need to be able to identify your property and then be able to show that it was yours and it was covered, and if, God forbid, something were to happen, right? Is that kind of the idea behind
Yeah,
it?
you want to make sure you have all your documentation. That's going to help you the recovery process if you are affected by the disaster itself.
All right, so water's rising. John, we get the alert. What's next? What's happening and what should we be doing? What's going to happen from Yuba Water Agency? What are you guys discussing? What should we know?
Yeah, so before the water even rises, we're looking at forecasts out 1 to 2 weeks in advance. And so anytime we even think that there's going to be a possibility that water could be high or that we can make releases that are higher than normal, we start coordinating with our local, state, and federal partners. We make water releases for irrigation, we make water releases for in-stream river flows, we make water releases for power generation, and we also make releases for floods. And so with all that being in the mix in terms of a multi-operational reservoir, we really have to look out ahead of time and plan ahead of time. So when that does come, then we're able to give the notifications ahead of time and get people the information that we need and continue to coordinate as those conditions change. And I think we put together a video that we can show that kind of demonstrates that.
That would be great. Can you cue up the video?
Releasing water from the dam. It can be pretty controversial, and we get your concerns. After all, in Yuba County, we're no strangers to extreme weather. So we'd like to take this opportunity to reassure you we've got this. First of all, let's talk about why we have the dam. New Bullard's Bar was built over 50 years ago to reduce flood risk and improve water supply to the county. These are our top priorities, and they always will be. Producing hydroelectricity and selling water are secondary. These support the state's water supply and clean energy goals, generating revenue that directly benefits the community and funds projects that support our missions right here in Yuba County. While it's important that we generate this income, the community's well-being is always our #1 concern, and we will never put that at risk. So how does it all work? As water from the mountains fills the reservoir, we work to balance this inflow with the outflow. Things get interesting when the water levels rise. During storm season, our federal flood partner requires us to keep a flood pool as a buffer. This ensures we have enough space to store excess water during particularly wet and snowy years. The spillway is the feature of our dam that lets us maintain safe water levels, allowing us to control the release of water from the reservoir safely. So when do we release water? The top line is when the levels get too high. But when is anything that simple? The first thing to say is that we don't decide the size of the flood pool. That's up to our federal flood partner, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who preset regulations based on the calendar. So occasionally we have to roll with the punches and release water to make sure we maintain the required buffer, even if it seems counterintuitive. The second thing to say is that there are a lot of factors at play here. We're not just responding to current conditions, but trying to predict future ones. On a daily basis, we monitor forecasts, look at real-time water storage and river flows, receive and interpret forecast data, run computer models to determine how much to release. We keep track of everything from how much snowfall there is in the mountains to how much water is flowing in the lower Yuba River near Marysville. And this is all happening hourly, so we can stay on top of factors that are as changeable as, well, the weather. It's a huge team effort involving local, state, and federal partners working together to share the data that informs every decision we make. Given our community's history, feeling concerned or anxious about the water levels is natural, but we carefully consider many factors before deciding to release water from the dam, taking precautions and using some of the latest science and technology to predict all eventualities. Our top priority is always the well-being of the community, and while Mother Nature ultimately holds the cards, we are doing everything we can to keep everyone safe now and in the future. So please trust us when we say that your safety will always be our #1 priority.
It's always good to hear. As we know, this next one's going to go directly to you, Sheriff Anderson. I remember, because I work in education, the Paradise Fires and what was going on in that situation. And then, obviously from there, we learned a lot of things, but we learned even more when we did the evacuation. And so Butte County's been a great learner for us. So with that being said, as our sheriff, if a flood does occur, what happens? What do you recommend people do? Where should we go? What should be happening? And where should we lean in our ear into? Because you know, social media is out there, and it gives us all kinds of information, and mostly disinformation. So who do we listen to?
Well, the notifications that Oscar and you brought up, Yuba alerts, that's a great source, and there's some redundancy there. You get Code Red, Zone Haver, Genesis, also we have iPods that we can utilize as well. So sign up for those things. You can't have too much information. I would think, well, I know from personal history that, we talk a lot during these times, right? So when the rivers start rising, we're on the phone almost constantly collaborating and talking, looking at the water levels. We have certain stages where they get to, it puts us on alert. And I'm excited. I know that the water agency's been working for a while on some inundation software, and it's going to be a game changer for us because we'll be able to, all the data, the current data, including atmospheric conditions, are plugged into this software, and so we know if there's a problem, in a certain area, we can put that on our map, and then we'll see which areas we need to focus on and look at in regards to evacuation. So
That's encouraging. I mean, think about it as your family. What would you tell your family if something's happening? I mean, because this is basically, these are family members. Or people here today, they want to know, what do I do? Where do I go? That kind of stuff.
I've lived through it twice as well, in 86 and 87, and it's frightening. And so you have to have a plan. Have your information at hand, have a go bag ready, know the area, know the potential routes. We can't tell you ahead of time which route to take if you don't know where the danger is coming from. And that's one of the challenging things with catastrophic failures. And I feel much better a decreased chance that we're ever going to have those catastrophic failures again, but we still have to be mindful of it. So know the area where you live. There are some challenges that we have in regards to evacuations, but just be ready, be alert. And when you get the warning, and when you hear a warning as the rivers are rising, conditions are changing, pay attention to your surroundings. Watch the news. We'll put out alerts on, through our alert system as well, advising people of the conditions. And, that's all we can do. We can't predict the future, but we can predict the future now. So
We're getting there, I hear something. It sounds like we're getting closer. It sounds like being able to get closer to hearing that. Is that what I'm hearing?
the technology that we have at our fingertips is just so awesome. And, just pay attention to your surroundings. Don't listen to Facebook. Don't look at Facebook. During these times, a lot of times we get misinformation or disinformation put out, and it just,
Because of panic, right?
It makes confusion for us.
I've worked in education 33 years now. I have a saying, common sense isn't so common. And it's a lot of things that people do don't make sense when they're stressed. And so it's really hard to, not panic because you think of worst case scenario. I call it the mama bear syndrome. For those who've worked in education, when your child's at risk and you're thinking something's gonna happen, you go full mama bear. And that what happens in these situations, a lot of people get stressed and they stop using common sense. So take that deep breath, stop and think, and then make sure that you're getting not just good sources, but reliable sources, because there'll be a lot of disinformation out there, as Sheriff Anderson was saying.
Yeah, and I think, the county does a great job, OES does a great job, through our press information officers that we have on staff. We have online staff as well, so they'll be putting out information that's been vetted and confirmed and is accurate.
Perfect. So Oscar, God forbid, flooding is really bad. Can you talk about what happens after the help and what happens in our community and what are some of the things people should know if we ever got to that situation and we actually have the flood for recovery and things like that? What would the future look like and what would we need to know?
Well, again, what you need to know is that's where you go back comes into play. All your more important documents that you took with you, all your information, your IDs, your licenses, insurance information, your tax documents, all that you have in your go bag during the recovery process and all that. County OES, we work with the state and with you. We'll bring in partners from the state level as well as the federal levels to help you in the recovery process. And there's programs and steps the way that we will be working with you alongside of you until you get back to the new normal of your recovery process if you're affected during a flood event.
Oh, thank you for that information. Ryan, let's look to the future a little bit here. We've heard tonight about all the improvements to our levees and their systems. Now that we're feeling a little bit more relaxed, maybe, can we just sit back and relax now and knowing that everything's just perfect and everything's all better? And that's a great English statement, all better. Everything is much better?
Yeah, I'd like to say we're all done, but certainly that's not the case, right? I mean, I don't think we'll ever be able to say we're all done and rest. And I think we're always going to make improvements to our infrastructure. We'll always be investing in the levees and the flood risk reduction infrastructure. I think a big thing on the horizon for us at Yuba-Water is looking at just control the water from New Bullard's Bar. And I don't know, I'm sure everybody saw the atmospheric control spillway exhibit. I think that's the next job for us, the ability to just have more timely and better control of the flows in the river. And I think that we're always going to be looking for more improvements. One thing, as we start to wrap up the urban areas, Marysville, Linda, all over Plumas Lake, we're going to start looking at our rural areas, because as long as we exist, our mission is going to be flood risk reduction. That's why we're here. And as long as we're generating revenue through the power plant, we're going to invest that in flood risk reduction.
Believe me, for a Plumas Lake resident, we appreciate that. So it's good to hear that we're putting the money back into our county. John, so I understand Yuba Water Agency maybe have a few big projects that are planned that are, if constructed, would significantly reduce flood risk. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Ryan hinted at it, but it truly is a generational project, and that is our atmospheric river control spillway. And people saw it tonight, but essentially what that is, it's a second spillway that's lowering the dam But its purpose is to reduce flows downstream during the peak event, during these atmospheric rivers, which you know are the storms that cause all the flooding in the region. Quite honestly, it's the best project that I've worked on in my career, being a meteorologist and a water manager. It's extremely exciting, and part of that is it's paired with new operations. So this is the forecast-informed reservoir operations. We're improving atmospheric river forecasts. Again, we're talking about predicting the future. Well, we kind of are doing that at this point.
That's awesome.
And we're getting better at it. And we're working with the pioneers, the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. They're the ones that pioneered the science and technology behind that. And then we're getting those new forecasts into the rules that we have to use to operate the reservoir with our federal partner, the Army Corps of Engineers. So I think we also put a video together to explain that a little bit as well. But again, this is a big deal. So.
Atmospheric rivers are long, narrow bands of concentrated water vapor that produce major amounts of rainfall and snow and are responsible for up to half of California's annual precipitation. Atmospheric rivers begin in the warm waters of the Pacific, where water evaporates into the air. When this humid air meets a Pacific storm, the water vapor is concentrated and driven toward the coast, becoming a fire hose of precipitation. Once the atmospheric river reaches the coastal mountains and the inland Sierra, the collision squeezes additional rain and snow from the system. Atmospheric rivers can be beneficial, replenishing reservoirs and keeping us out of drought. But too many, too close together, can create flooding. Yuba Water Agency is working with partners at Scripps Institution of Oceanography's Center for Western Weather and Water Extremes to better understand atmospheric rivers in our region in order to improve weather forecasts and better manage our water resources. In fact, Yuba Water is designing a new second spillway at New Bullards Bar Dam and Reservoir to maximize the benefits of this improved weather forecasting. The Atmospheric River Control Spillway, or ARC spillway for short, will improve the dam's operational flexibility, significantly reducing flood risk, enhancing dam safety, and strengthening the region's resilience to climate change. Bullards Bar has only one spillway currently, situated high in the dam. Because of that, when there is significant rainfall, we have to wait until the storm is upon us and much of the reservoir is filled before we can release large amounts of water. But by then, the river channel below is also filling because of the storm. Another challenge is that currently, the maximum water level for the reservoir is set by an inflexible, calendar-based approach. During storm seasons, we are required to keep the water level in the lake lower so that there is plenty of room to store potential runoff. That's the case regardless of how much rain falls, which often forces us to release water at the beginning of winter, even though the rest of the year may end up being dry. But by building the ARC spillway, with gates 31.5 feet lower in elevation than the existing gates, and also implementing forecast-informed reservoir operations based on the atmospheric river research with Scripps, we will be able to use the forecast to determine how much runoff water we expect to flow into the reservoir in the days ahead, and then release water in advance of the oncoming storm, while the river channel below can handle the flows. We can then use the space in the reservoir to hold back flows when the storm is strongest. The ability to reduce the amount of water on a levee system during the peak of a big storm can significantly lower flood risk. The reduction in peak flows decreases the probability of reaching or surpassing levee flood stages, as well as the likelihood of overtopping levees. But perhaps more importantly, it reduces the likelihood of seepage significantly, and that is key to levee safety. In fact, most levee failures in California, including the two most recent floods in Yuba County in 1986 and 1997, have been caused by excessive seepage during an atmospheric river storm. Here's how reducing the amount of water on a levee helps. The higher the water level on a levee, the more hydrostatic force is putting pressure on the base of that levee. This is the same phenomenon that makes you feel pressure on your eardrums as you go deeper underwater. As you swim down to the bottom of a pool that's 4 feet deep, there's not much pressure. But when you swim down to the bottom of a pool that's 8 feet deep, you experience more hydrostatic pressure pushing on your body. That same type of pressure can push and wear on levees. And if seepage finds a weak spot in the levee, the hydrostatic pressure will push flows through and erode the interior of the levee, eventually causing it to fail. So if the water in the river is 30 feet deep, the pressure at the bottom is much greater than if the water is only 20 feet deep. And that pressure decreases as the water level gets lower. In fact, some of the levees in our area are among the tallest in the state, so there's a ton of pressure on them in a storm when the channel is filling up. And every foot that we decrease the water level can result in a dramatic reduction of the pressure on the levee. So, building the Arc spillway and implementing forecast-informed reservoir operations at New Bullard's Bar will lower the downstream water levels, which reduces the pressure on the levees and the probability of seepage, thereby decreasing flood risk and significantly improving public safety. Additionally, during some dry water years, if no storms are forecast, we can potentially hold on to water that we normally would have had to release, which could be especially valuable when water availability is scarce. Find out more about this important public safety project at yubawater.org.
Wow, that's amazing. What kind of time frame are we looking at on that? Are we looking like in 6 months?
We wish. Probably on the order of 4 to 5 years at this point, but the project is well in its advanced stages.
Awesome. Keep us posted and informed, because these are some great information we have. I just have a few more questions, and then we're going to get to the Q&A time. So sit tight here. We're not too much longer on that. My next question is just basically, is there anything else that we can do to reduce flood risk here, or even more? I'll start with you, Sheriff Anderson.
Well, so I think the water agencies assembled an incredible staff, I have to say that. And as far as reducing flood risk, I don't know that we can do that.
Right.
We can just stay alert.
Do you keep getting maps or things that might keep people out, something like that, some information?
Well,
things
yeah,
that
so
will be coming out?
our levee system obviously is very important. So patrolling the levees and keeping ATVs and motorcycles off of the levees, those types of things. Patrick shaking his head because that is a problem. We have people that
Looky-loos, right?
yeah, well, they're down there recreating, so that they look at damaging our level.
Oh, I see what you're saying. They're in the non-types too. Okay.
Yeah, so we have to protect the levees that we have, continue to utilize any tools that we have to improve them, the dam. But I think it's just staying informed and trusting that there is an incredible staff of people watching those river levels, watching the atmospheric conditions, and we're going to do our best to protect everybody in the county. That's the bottom line, is that we can't really control the weather, but we can control our actions and we can control the information.
I remember that as a Boy Scout. Be prepared. That was one of the things. Make sure you have a plan. Put something in place. With that being said, Patrick, let us know if there's anything else that might affect those integrity of our levees. Is there anything else we should be aware of, or things of that nature?
Rob, I would say the best thing to be aware of is just to never become complacent, to be persistent with your weekly inspections of your infrastructure, the levees, the drainage systems, the pumps. As Sheriff Anderson alluded to, we have the ATVs, the unauthorized vehicles. Those are constant threats to the levee, and it's important that the public can help out if you see unauthorized vehicles driving up the levees, causing the ruts. Call the sheriff, let them know what's going on, and get them out there, and let's try to maintain our levees the best we can, so they will maintain for
all this time I thought we were going to take our Chevys to the levee.
Well, again, it's important to never become complacent. A reclamation district will typically patrol the levees year-round, at least a couple of days a week, whether there's water on the levees or not. What are we looking for? We're looking for unauthorized encroachments. Has there been a jumped-up car thrown on the levee slope? In one case, I had an entire structure built close to the levee and had to have them pull that out of the way. And those are serious issues during a high water event, because if there's excessive seepage or a worst case scenario possible boil, you're not going to have room to integrate flood fighting there. So you need to maintain your space there.
Not going to build a swimming pool right next to the levee. It's kind of like Ryan, the next one's for you. Basically, how are some more ways that we can stay informed? What are some of the things that are out there, or things that people should be aware of? Obviously, the events like this, we hope that the Water Agency continues to do something like this. But what are the people? What do we as citizens of Yuba County need to know or be aware of?
I think just being aware of the risk, and it's events like these. We talk about it, and I think if you've been here for a long time, you tend to understand the risk, but also know where to go for information, as the sheriff talked about, as Oscar talked about. Just know what's reliable out there, and just stay tuned in and just be aware, and especially as the weather starts to change and the rivers they start to rise, just know where to tune in and trusted resources. When we talk about social media and disinformation and things like that, that's a real problem out there. I mean, everybody knows somebody who said, the levee's going to break, or the dam's going to fail, or whatever. And it's all over the place. But I think what our teams collectively try to do is build that reliable source of information through the official channels that Oscar was talking about, the emergency alerts, but also Yuba-Waters social media. The sheriff's office has good social media. OES in the county has really good social media. So understanding those as reliable sources and knowing where your information is coming.
Do you guys put out a newsletter or anything that people can get information on, or anything like that, or things that they can subscribe to through a web page or anything like that, just from Yuba Water Agency or anything like that out there?
Not necessarily a newsletter, but certainly our website. We keep our website up to date and obviously follow our board meetings and things like that. And also pay attention to the investments that we're doing throughout the county. Yuba Water works with our local reclamation district 784, District 10, RD 817, 2103, City of Marysville for the ring levee. A lot of our investments, Yuba Water, just to be clear, we don't own or operate any levees in Yuba County. But what we do is invest in their improvement, and we do that with our partners. So a lot of our revenue from the hydro production, we produce hydroelectricity at Colgate. A lot of that revenue goes back into those levees through our partners. And just pay attention to that, and pay attention to the projects that are going on. Understand the risk.
Thank you. Oscar, one last time, where do we subscribe? Code Red, what are the things that we should get called for, so that people are staying informed? Just make sure that one push again, obviously Yuba alerts, that kind of stuff. What are some things that you would highly recommend? I mean, should people get flood insurance? I mean, with that kind of stuff, what do you do?
Yeah, if you're familiar with the area and you live in a flood-prone area, yes, flood insurance is always help. We have a robust levee system, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be insured and be ready for everything. The most important thing I can tell you that everyone go to our website, beprepared.org, has all your information you're going to need for the Yuba alert system here for Yuba County. You get all your information there, and we all work together. Again, like I always said, we're here for the community. We're here to provide you all the information necessary. Any information you'd be looking for anytime there's an emergency alerts. Go to our website, it's trusted sources, Facebook pages like you mentioned, the sheriff page, the water agency page, and the Facebook page for OES. Those are vetted sources of information. That's the most up-to-date current information you'll receive.
All right, this is your chance. You got some questions. We want to hear from you, and you can ask any one of the board members, not me, because I'd have no clue, unless you want to ask for something on education. But what are some of your questions you want answered? Somebody in the room, just raise your hand, and Dee Dee will come back with her. John Nicoletti in the back.
Thank you. You guys did a great job tonight. Thank you for hosting this water agency. In Debbie Taylor's book, My Romantic 72 Years in Yuba County, he talks a lot about the levees, talks a lot about water conditions, but what he really brought up that sticks home with me is he talked about calling, the major employers when you're needing to get sandbagging going, you're needing to deal with something past stage 3, getting prepared. And so have the number of the managers at Franklin Booth, have the number of the managers at Earl Parker's. They're the best workers, they know them, and they can get to their man and get them coordinated quicker. I know that Patrick does a lot of preparation. I know Oscar has a lot of it going, but I think unless you already have it happen, it'd be worth studying the successes of the past by knowing who we have here that can respond and really build that army quickly.
Thank you. Any other questions? Raise your hand so that Dee Dee can come by. She has the microphone. Right up here in the front.
Hi, this question is for Oscar. Do you guys have a list of items that you should have in a to-go bag for those that might not know what to put in one?
Yes, if you go to our beprepared.org, on the information page, you scroll down there, we have all the information. You go down and you click on the go bag items, it'll get you enough items of all the stuff that we could possibly put in the bag.
You guys are an easy crowd. Oh, there you go. Johnny Burks, real quick. Here we go.
I'm not sure who this question would be for, and maybe it's a political question, but because there is a possibility of failures of levees even if you do all the right things, and so then you would have to have evacuations, We were here in 2017, and I thought the word about evacuations went out really well, but then everybody got kind of jammed up. And so I know there's been much discussion over the years about a third bridge, and I've heard that it was not approved by voters for a tax, and I've heard that the state wasn't going to pay for it and scrapped it. Does this fit into any of Yuba Water's priorities where maybe they could either do a match to fund a third bridge or potentially fund a third bridge for an evacuation?
Who wants to touch that one? That may be out of our realm within what they're doing at this time, but I would be more interested from Sheriff Anderson. What do we do? Because I remember the same thing, Johnny, where it was jammed up and people were going the wrong way down the road and they had no clue what they were doing and they were running out over people and that kind of stuff, not literally, but running, down the roads the wrong direction. Have we done any mitigation since then from learning from the Oroville part? Like, can we, we're going to make this all one way and this one way so that everybody's going the same direction where we're not having that cross traffic and things?
Yeah, so if you recall, we did, so the freeways, we had people going one way, people go the other way. Yeah, so I think one of the plans, depending on where we're evacuating from and to, is to do counterflow on the freeways.
So obviously in towns like egress and ingress, because a lot of times people get jammed up in Marysville, but every time they hit the train trestle over here, right? And you have to go around it. What happens if something like that happens? Do we have plans where they can get that Yuba alert? Does it go on that so that they would know, hey, don't head that way. This place is jammed up. Maybe something like that might be something that we could help people get out of town.
Yeah, so
expeditiously and safely.
Actually, one of the new pieces of software that we've had for a little while is Genesis or Zone Haven, and it can give you multiple different evacuation routes. Obviously you have to know where the threat is coming from, but it's amazing. It tells you how many cars are in a community and which avenues to use for egress. So we have many more tools now than we had before, but it still comes down to an incident like that is just, you have so many people in an area that, it's...
And you only have so many men and women that are working for you that can go there too, right?
Yeah. And it's tough, but that's the key. Be ready and be prepared, and, if you have issues, if you have problems, if you have family members that have issues, maybe, you want to get out of town during that warning phase and not wait for evacuation. So it's going to be different for everybody, but there are people that need help getting out.
Thank you, our elderly and things like that. We know that with buses and things, and that's where schools come in. A lot of times we work with the sheriff, as you know, and there's instances we call in our school bus barns, and they actually will go to hospitals and pick up people. They'll go to housing for elderly, things of that nature, and be able to get them out of town, to help out. And that's an area where us as schools and education helps out. So I know that we work, hand in hand, and that's why we talk with OES and they give us information, whether it be fire or anything, and people in the hills. And we do try to, supply that and help out. And that's one of the parts where we do have that partnership. And a lot of people aren't aware of who to call or what to do, but that's just helping them out. Willie, do you even want to try to jump on that other question, or are you going to let it go, or I'll move on to the next one?
Yeah, I'll jump on that question. So the agency was created for. One of our primary missions is flood control. That's a great question because to keep the public safe, we're investing with our partners in levees. We own New Bullards Bar Dam. We're managing the water with the Army Corps of Engineers and others. And we're also going to build about a $300 million arc spillway, which has been identified as the next best piece of infrastructure we could invest in to reduce the flood risk in Yuba County. But there is also evacuation is an issue. We have to balance our investments. We have to look at what is the best bang for our dollar. I would just say this, we are not authorized to own and operate highways. We're not like the county where we have a general fund that can go into anything that benefits the county. We can participate in partnerships like we do with levee districts and water districts on the water supply side, and we could partner in something that was justifiable as an identified need or an identified weakness and a mitigation measure for a need to increase the effectiveness of an evacuation. So we could do that. But right now, with the revenue we receive, we've identified the arc spillway as our next best investment to protect us from flooding, directly protect us, not just us and our lives, but protect our towns, our cities, our homes, and protect from the economic harm that we saw in 1986 and 1997.
Thank you. Question, Brett Hasty.
The Yuba Water Agency built Bullard's Bar. We're building an arc spillway. I just want to ask, this helps more than Yuba County. Can you guys elaborate, John? Can you elaborate on this? Helps everybody downstream. It helps Sutter County. The work that agency has done, working on the levees, setting back levees, building arc spillway, helps the entire Sacramento Valley. I wondered if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. So, in addition to our operations at New Bullard's Bar, we coordinate with our partners, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and also DWR, the State Water Project, who owns and operates Lake Oroville. We actually have a program that's in place today. It's been in place since 2005. It's called Forecast Coordinated Operations. It's kind of a predecessor of FURO. And what that is basically we coordinate our operations with Oroville to make sure that we're not making releases on top of each other and reduce the stage downstream. In fact, we just had an annual functional exercise earlier this week. We continue to work with them on that project, and it's been great. When we talk about the arc spillway, that arc spillway has the ability to influence the flows downstream, both on the confluence of the Yuba Feather and at the Yuba and the Bear. And so when Brent talks about, it has kind of regional importance or it has regional effect, it truly does. So it benefits us here in Yuba County, obviously, but it's so big that it actually influences additional areas of surrounding counties as well.
Thank you, John. All right, any more questions? Right here, we've got one in the round and then one in the back, and after that one.
Hi.
Got that, Sandy?
I haven't lived here long enough to really understand, so I appreciate this very much. So my question about the levy is it legal to do recreation other than motorized vehicles, and is it safe to go ride your bike, walk, play on the levees?
That's an excellent question. The answer is yes, it is legal to recreate on the levees as long as it doesn't involve any type of motor vehicle. So that means no motorcycles, no ATVs, no cars, technically not even electric bikes, but it's kind of technicality, but definitely no motor vehicles, no horseback riding, but you're perfectly welcome to walk on the levees, jog on them, walk your dog. People utilize them quite often. It's a nice stroll.
And safety?
Yes, it's definitely safe. I mean, they're not designed with handrails or any kind of barriers to keep you from.
No, I meant more about the people, running into people.
Generally,
Depends on
yes.
what area you're in.
Some neighborhoods
Night, day.
some neighborhoods are safer than others, but during daylight hours, I would be comfortable in those areas.
Okay, thank you. Another question I had was, I had just moved here in 2017, and so could you, without, I know that you guys don't manage the Oroville Dam, but what happened, and was the communication with Oroville good at that time?
Sheriff Anderson, you would have great information if you worked directly with the sheriff there who had to handle that.
In 2017, I was a lieutenant and I was in charge of the investigations division. So I wasn't an administrator per se in the sheriff's department, but I distinctly, I know the sheriff of Butte County pretty well, I know our former sheriff pretty well. There was literally a 30-second phone call between the two. Sheriff Honey of Butte County called Sheriff Durford here and said, you need to evacuate your entire valley floor. And it was mayhem.
Well, she's asking basically what happened predated the information and how did it get to that point basically, and then we had to make that quick decision is what I'm basically hearing.
I'm going to ask for help on that one when we get to that point. So all I know is that there was a failure in the spillway at Oroville Dam, and it was a catastrophic failure. And we were at one point told the dam was going to fail. And so we were just scrambling trying to get people out of the county, get them into the higher areas, including our staff. At one point we were concerned, and one of the other things is we didn't have that mitigation tool at that time, so we got maps. We didn't know which areas to start on, so we now have that information.
It was a learning experience for those of us in government jobs. I mean, all of us, we had to learn from just like the Paradise Fire. And people still call Butte County when something goes wrong. I I was talking to Dee Cordell just a little earlier, like when the Palisades fires was going, they still call Butte County and ask them, what do we do? Who do we connect with? Where do we go? And that's kind of what happened as we learn from these mistakes and what happened. Ryan, can you maybe discuss maybe the failures and how what got to? Do you have any clue on that part of it or any information? Or I think she was just kind of asking, why did it get to that point and nobody knew until we had to do something at the last second is kind of what I was hearing.
I'd hate to, it's really, I don't want to speak on behalf of DWR, really, it was their event, and I don't want to go on record talking about what happened. But I mean, there was a potential failure of the dam, and we all know that in the room, and I think it was just, it just happened. It was an unfortunate series of events that had happened, and I think the sheriff of Butte County made the right call, absolutely. Had that failed and the evacuations weren't initiated, we'd have hundreds of thousands of casualties. So, again, the technical piece behind the dam failure, I apologize, I don't think it'd be appropriate for us to talk about that here, but.
All right, thank you. We had another question in the back there.
I wanted to just add one little bit to that. So because of what happened in 2017, there were some legislative changes, and there's a committee now that oversees Warville Dam, and I have a captain that sits on that committee, and we meet regularly, and so we are informed, and I think that's the key, is that we would know, at the time of something happening. So
Agreed, we're learning every day, and again, we learn from our mistakes, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is we're trying not to make the mistakes, and we're trying to have forthright and think ahead of things, and hopefully we have some foresight and be able to do that. And hearing with the art spillway and some of those things, that's a great way of trying to segue into our future to have a safer place for our kids, for our grandkids, and that kind of.
Just to add on to that, today it's kind of a different story. Well, it really is, because as the storm starts to materialize and the rivers come up, we at Yuba-Water are on the phone with DWR data. We know exactly what's going on in Wendell. And John talked about forecast coordinated operations. We know what they're going to be releasing, and vice versa. They know what we're going to be releasing, and we coordinate that together to make sure that we don't overwhelm the system downstream in the areas where you see it.
And that also is a change as a result of 2017?
Some of it.
Yeah, I think it's better. It's certainly better.
Because communication always grows, is what I've learned through, bad times, catastrophes. So yes, you've been patient. Thank you.
I just have one quick question. I noticed there's nobody up there from the city of Marysville. I'm kind of wondering about the relationship between the county and the city during a flood threat. And I mean, does the county have authority over city government during those times, or is there the potential of the Marysville mayor saying one thing and the county saying another thing in terms of evacuations, that kind of thing?
Do you want to do the history lesson, Wendell, like where the, as far as the authorities, and that's kind of basically what happens is, who's basically in charge is what I'm hearing, and who do you communicate with and that kind of stuff in a calamity or in a catastrophe?
yeah, so it's spelled out in Penal Code 409.5, California Penal Code, that who could declare or make evacuation notifications, and the sheriff is one of those individuals that can do that. But I will tell you that, I meet with the new chief. I met with him just today. The relationship that we have is we're fostering it. It's going to be good. And I think OES works well with the city of Marysville. I'll let Oscar elaborate on that a little bit. But once that declaration of the evacuation is made, from the county level, the city would follow suit. But we would include them. We collaborate with them on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any more?
Rob,
Yes,
so
Oscar.
to go on top of that as well, just to give you a heads up, OES speaks with Butte County OES as well. During these events, so rise, not only is the URG coordinating with DWR and the Lake Orville Agency, OES is also coordinating with other partners, other county OESs as well, to see what's getting affected. We talked to multiple OESs throughout any kind of event like this. We're always monitoring everything within our county that can affect our county weeks in advance. So it's always a partnership, and we partner with every stakeholder, every public safety agency located here in the county. We coordinate collaboratively effectively every day. And during any emergency and non-emergencies, there's always operational meetings, operational calls. So we really work well together. That's why It's one of the great reasons why I love working for Yuba County, that we work well with each other. And everyone up here, we are invested in this community because we're from here. We are born here. We want to make sure we protect the community, and that's why we collaborate and coordinate, even during off times, during the off season. So.
And I can attest to that as the superintendent of schools. Many times Oscar will text me directly and say, hey, are you aware of something that's going up on the hills? And then I send out a text message to all the superintendents immediately so they are aware of what's happening. Because it doesn't affect just one district, it affects every district in our area. And because everybody gets information out there, and sometimes it's that misinformation, and if we get it ahead of a time, then you can break those down. But working, as you said, with OES, the sheriff, Marysville PD, any of the fire department groups and everything, it's always been a pleasure. And it's one of the great things about Yuba County, is that they really have a resiliency and a people that work together. I go across a lot of places throughout the counties, and it is not always that way. We are blessed on that. We have a great group of people that work together, and they do communicate, and they have the best interest of our county and our citizens. And it's not that way everywhere I go. And so I do appreciate it even in my position, but I know that what Oscar's saying is right on. We do communicate with each other on many areas. Dee Dee, anything else?
Yeah, we actually got a question on Facebook. We don't have anyone that's an insurance specialist up there, but I thought we got a question about insurance. And it's, why is the FEMA insurance still so expensive for us if we've upgraded to 100-year levies? So maybe we could just talk a little bit about how the insurance program works, and that, do we still recommend insurance even though we have 100-year levies or 200-year levies in some cases?
I'll attempt to answer that. So yeah, so the last part of your question, do we still recommend? I personally recommend it to everybody. Again, having lived through these events, not afraid to admit there's a little PTSD going on. It helps me sleep at night to have flood insurance. That said, recognizing it is extremely expensive, and it's only getting worse. It's only getting more. And we are working with the county, our partners at Yuba County, as well as others, to get to the bottom of it. We don't have a really good answer as to why flood insurance rates have gone up so much. We know it's tied to what zone you're in and the level of protection you have, but the work on that is ongoing. I know we have worked with a company, an engineering firm that is also invested in that, finding solutions. And so, there's some preliminary work going on there, but that's about the best answer I have. We recognize it, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate that.
Kevin, you want to answer any of that? Okay. Figured, but might as well ask.
I also have a follow-up question. This is probably for Ryan. Can you talk a little bit about, Rob had mentioned how we're all working together. Can you talk a little bit about our crisis exercise training and how we work together in that way? We literally train the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's actually one of the more fun parts of the job is the crisis exercise training. So Yuba Water, with our partners, we put on several exercises every year. One of which is like the crisis communications exercise, where our communications team responds to simulated emergencies. What we do in those exercises is bring in all of our stakeholders, and we train like we fight, and it feels very real. And these are believable scenarios that we have to respond to. That's one type of exercise. Recently, we did our FEMA, our FERC functional exercise, which is simulating. Without giving it too many details of the exercise, we failed our dam as an exercise. And so we had all of our partnering stakeholders in the room. And when you have these exercises, what makes them so much fun is they feel very real. And you get emotionally invested. You know it's an exercise. Intellectually, you know it's an exercise, but emotionally it feels very real. And so the adrenaline is running, the stakes are high. And I think it's a very valuable tool, not just for us at the water agency, but for our partners. To not only how to best respond, but it develops a lot of collaboration and it builds relationships. Our relationships are really strong as a result of these exercises.
Well, being prepared helps for everything. And I know we're getting ready to close out, but I want to again thank you all for coming out tonight and being a part. I know Willie's going to close this and land this plane right now. But I also want to thank Yuba Water Agency. So let's give them a big hand for putting this together. With that being said, Willie, will you land this plane and get us out of here?
I will do that, Rob. First off, I want to thank everyone who came out tonight to participate in this. It's been great turnout. It's been fun. I hope it's been educational for you. I want to thank the panelists, but I also want to let you know that the panelists, they get paid to do this. That's what they do. Rob is a volunteer up here tonight. He's our moderator. I asked Rob to do this, and he said absolutely. And as the Yuba County Superintendent of Schools, he has an interest in not only living behind levees in Plumas Lake, but he has an interest in all the students in Yuba County. And so, Rob, I can't do much for you, bro, but I can give you a Yuba Water Agency mug, and thank you for being the moderator. Totally appreciate it. And with that, I'd like to close it out. Again, thank you all for being here. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Patrick. See you in the morning.
Yep, see you in the morning.
Hi, I'm Neil Goforth of Comfort Keepers of Yuba, Sutter, and Nevada counties. Caring for elders, or even yourself, has challenges. Comfort Keepers of Yuba, Sutter, and Nevada counties can help you address today's issues and plan for tomorrow with in-home and specialized care for you or your family members. Call us at 530-749-8800. Comfort Keepers of Yuba, Sutter, and Nevada counties.
Yuba-Sutter.LIVE. It's the truth that comes through.